Warning, bitch ass nigga, the following contains graphic imagery and language that a lot of you bitch ass niggas and fucking bitches ain't ready for. So if you a soft sucker, bitch made ass nigga, you might wanna close your eyes and cover your ears. Parental discretion is advised, cake ass nigga.
I want us all in attendance to close our eyes for a moment. Take this moment to imagine a world that is created in our heavenly image. Imagine a world where we possess more money than there are drops of water in the Atlantic. Imagine a world where even the biggest sinner in this room can buy his way into heaven on earth. Imagine your name being immortalized in history and engraved into the existence of others in the future. Now come back. I understand your fear, but this can be your reality. This is what I can do for you, but only with your helping hand. For what you give, you shall receive. I can assure you that we will not only be closer to godliness, but we will be golden. We will be glorified, and we will be God. One may ask, what is it to be God? What does God do? God creates. God created a playground that features mountains and hills we can climb, lakes and beaches we can swim in, and deserts and forests for us to lose ourselves in like little children. Are you still following? Well, what if I told you that all the world is a game, and the planet is our playground? And in the age of man, the world is defined as the circumstances that hold influence upon the planet. But in the age of man, how do we compensate for entering this game late? Well, if we aspire to be God, and God creates, somehow we have to change these circumstances to favor us in our own image, consequently changing the world, which is a game. And now that we are the creators of this current and expanding game that has been in progress for quite some time, if we can continue to have success in presenting this game we have devised as simply the way of the world since the beginning of time, then we can present ourselves as God. However, of course, all great ideas are accompanied by great obstacles. There is a darker face of the earth in which the truth harbors. They have a culture that vastly precedes us, and they greatly outnumber us. Considering this, at this point, there is no way we will properly see the end game we envision with them still here. Keep that in mind for later. I will revisit this obstacle. Now I can guarantee some of you are strongly questioning why we could not just simply kill them all. And before I completely answer that, allow me to just explain something to you all. I am aware that I stand in a room full of businessmen, correct? And in business, as an opportunist, you look for any opportunity to capitalize. But in order to capitalize, you need capital. Now, did you keep in mind when I said,
there is no way we will properly see the end game we envision with them still here?
There is no way we can properly see the end game we envision with them still here. Understand, we do not necessarily have to kill them all. Just their mind, just their identity, just their culture. Kill the Indian, save the man. Social engineering. That's what this is all about. This is precisely why I'm here. Because through the religious wars of the past, we were able to assess the raw power that resides in the belief of the masses. And the people's belief is the coal that fuels the engine of our domination. Without it, this thought bubble of a reality will soon burst. Keep that in mind. But our first and primary order of business will be socially engineering an even more efficient model of the nigger. This new nigger's purpose will be staying out of the way while contributing to the expansion of our empire, and then self-destruction and deterioration upon becoming obsolete. You see, there comes a point where you decide to stop working for money and let money work for you. And the nigger is merely a strategic investment that will go forth and multiply for our agenda from multiple angles. Keep that in mind. Now, even with killing their minds, there is unfortunately for us no way to completely refurbish it for our use. We can at best get up to a 99.9% hijack, but there is no way to reach a full 100%. And because their mind simply is that powerful, just that 0.1% has the capacity to regenerate and restore the entire mind. So, similar to a weed-bound garden, this piece of social engineering requires diligent maintenance, or we risk the probability. No, we risk the assurance of our innovation, the nigger, malfunctioning and becoming out of hand for us. And since we will mold and manifest their idea and perception of the world as they will grow to know it, most of the masses will subconsciously interpret our removal from power as the end of the world. Because at that point, what else will they know outside of the reality that we created for them? Keep that in mind. And now that it is systematically established that they are player number 2 in our game, we are now able to constitute a narrative through history, science, and all other forms of media that reinforces and justifies their permanent position as player number 2, the guest. This is why the pen is mightier than the sword. We are aiming for a psychological and cultural transplant. And this is not just theory. We now have all the resources needed in order to start manifesting this all into a physical, living, breathing reality. Keep that in mind. Now, similar to the relationship between a handler and prostitutes in a brothel, we must keep our oars on a tight leash. This is a capitalist game we are playing, and a game the house always wins. Understand, prostitution does not exist outside of capitalism, because in order for that dynamic to actually work, the whore must be forever indebted, for debt is the American religion. The whore must be forever indebted, for debt is the American religion. The whore must be forever indebted, for that is the American religion, which is exactly why creating that illusion of scarcity is key. Remember, there is no need to be a prostitute in a land of abundance. Having said that, the house must seize control of all of the resources, because lack of resources creates vulnerability to those who possess them. And because the Negroes will be our main whores, we can prostitute them to not only ourselves, but also outside clientele. We can position this land as a brothel in which various nations all over the planet come to get a piece of the action and satisfaction. At a price, of course.
Negroes, come get your Negroes, they're hot and ready, come get.
Now, all of the people who are pawns in the game are playing to accumulate as many resources as possible in order to survive the game. A pawn may make it past all of the woes of the world, and may even upgrade to a higher position, but they will never be a king. And there is no way in hell that they will ever run the game as long as they are playing on our board by our rules. And as long as we can mentally rape them by convincing them that this is simply the way of the world since the beginning, they will forever belong to the game. And again, the house always wins. So while they are here, it's only opportune to make them pay a fee to live in this marvelous house they have built for us. And by lowballing them, by setting the start of this game that they will perceive as the world with their enslavement, they will want so badly to be accepted as an American citizen, which is the citizen that we have branded to be synonymous with freedom, that we will be able to starve them by selling them small crumbs of the American pie at a time. But never, ever do we give them anything of tangible substance. Never any money, but hope will do. Never any land, but the illusion of acceptance will do. The only things of tangible substance that will do are those in which we can still control, because anything you do not control can and will be used against you. Keep all of this in mind for later. But, fortunately for us, they will be content with whatever crumbs we decide to issue to them, just so long as they aren't being physically whipped or forced to breed with their parents. Any nugget will be deeply appreciated as a blessing from God in this cold, cruel world. And just so we remember, who engineers this cold, cruel world? Us. So subliminally and subconsciously, who will be their God? Hint, same answer. And with their engineered inferior mentality, they will just want a little more say of what goes on in our house, not realizing that the house is built right on top of the land of their own ancestors, and their own heritage
is built right on top of the land of their own ancestors, and their own heritage built right on top of the land of their own ancestors, and their own heritage
that they will never get to properly inherit under our game. And again, the house always wins.
Having said that, the house wants to seize control of all the resources, because lack of resources creates vulnerability to those who possess them.
Understand, history is a weapon, and the winner lives to tell the tale. The issue is, this game is far from over. In fact, I would say this will persist as a never-ending game for as long as they are walking this planet. While we have been successful thus far in manipulating their history, we have to ensure that they never fully rediscover their true history, let alone our true history. Now, each culture has its own reality. Every reality has its own facts, but there is only one truth. Realistically, there will never be a way to conceal the truth from all. Trust me, we have tried. But, to our advantage, the masses will gladly trade in the truth for entertainment, for bread and services. This can be highly difficult or relatively easy. You see, full conviction of our game is not necessary. All we need in order to keep those gears spinning is doubt, which causes confusion, which buys us more time to develop our plan and stay multiple steps ahead of them at their expense. We only need an ounce of truth in order to sell a pound of lies. And conversely, we only need an ounce of lies and a distraction. Ounce of lies. Distraction.
Ounce of lies.
In order to discredit the truth. And besides, wouldn't you agree it's blasphemous to go against God? Now, I recognize many of you are dazed and confused about the Emancipation Proclamation. This is just an opportunity in disguise, or the cost of doing business. You have to spend in order to earn. You see, since Lincoln became the face of abolition, they will always look to the president to be a knight in shining armor. Basically, they will think that in a capitalist society, someone who does not even make $500,000 a year has all the power in the world to change the game to fit their needs. Have you ever heard the story of the wolf and the fox? Two friends, the wolf and the fox, one day are on the prowl, and they spot a rabbit. The wolf and the fox play a game to see who can get the rabbit first. The wolf aggressively charges at the rabbit, but the rabbit has seen this one too many times, so the rabbit goes to hide. The fox sits back while this happens and laughs at the wolf. Then the fox casually meanders over to the rabbit and says,
Are you trying to hide from the big bad wolf? Let me help you. You can hide in here.
Understand, the most profitable way to dominate a market is through becoming your own competition. Having a controlled opposition gives you rights to the two leading horses in the race. And in order to conceal our intentions, make them feel as if they are gaining something out of the situation, so that those endorphins from anticipation will overshadow the skepticism. Remember, nothing is more costly than something given for free. This is a principle rarely understood by the masses, which will work in our favor. The bottom line is, we need our innovation, the nigger, to be out of their right mind. An out-of-mind nigger will be the one person on the planet foolish and naive enough to think and believe that just because they act and operate in everyone else's interest but their own, that we will also act and operate in their interest instead of our own. This hope they have will definitely be profitable. Understand, whatever we give them, we can always find a return on investment, plus interest. Because remember, nothing is more costly than something given for free. What does this mean for us? This means that if we want to be able to generationally pass down our leverage against them, they must always be dependent on us. They must always be children or guests in our own house. They must be domesticated animals that are broken so much so that they will not be able to survive on this unusual playing field without coming back to the master. And what do I mean by domestication? Understand, domestication lulls a creature's natural self-preservation instincts and transfers the objective of preservation into serving the interest of the dominator. Their ignorance equates to our bliss. us all get one thing very, very clear. Their united awakening is an absolute terror to our future and everything we have. We do not negotiate with terrorists. There is absolutely no way in hell we will be able to handle them all in a united effort against us. Which is exactly why we will continue to stress the importance of the mass manufacturing of the nigger. Because the enemy of our enemy is our friend. Mark my words. The nigger has the potential to act as a shield of defense against the indomitable Negro force that will prevail. And I predict that the biggest battle they will have to endure is the one amongst each other in an effort to unite. But how do we prevent it from even going this far? Well, this redistribution of wealth that has been in progress for quite some time will ultimately cripple the community to the point of being handicapped, which is when the Negroes will have two permissible choices in the progression of this game. One, they can have the illusion of bettering themselves, coming to work for our benefit, and learning to be more in our image through a psychological, cultural transplant. Or two, they can have the illusion of not feeding into the corporate machine by engaging in a series of detrimental enterprises that will ultimately help destroy the community as well. Either way, they are still a nigger because they are becoming an extension of us by serving our interests, whether they are aware of it or not. Now let us explore option 1. Remember, it is definitely possible to use the laws of nature to our advantage. What is the first and utmost law of nature? Self-preservation. If we successfully convince them that our game is simply the way of the world, they will subconsciously view working for our benefit as the safest means of survival, if they do not want to feel the wrath of God. And the fear of God is so deep that it will not only stop there, but it will also run in the family as their only permissible inheritance or heirloom. Think about this. The parents will gradually become more and more accustomed to the new game settings, since we will present this game as the way of the world. And in an effort to ensure their child's physical survival, they will groom and even beat their child into submission of the way our game is played, ultimately signing over the rights to their child's minds over to us. And of course, we will gladly take them, because a pimp always has it in his best interest to invest in fresher, younger whores. And a slave master knows the value of the youth's malleable mind. They will put their children into our institutions, such as the schools and the churches, hoping for us to save them and to wash their sins away. Allow me to touch on both of these institutions. Through our schools, we will be able to design our own education plan. Understand, education is merely a tool to further advance society. And under our game, in this world, whose society would we want to advance? Our own, of course. Anything else would simply be counterintuitive. With our institutionalized education, their newfound tools will only be truly effective in advancing our society. Anyone who tries to use our education outside of that purpose will have a very long and steep journey to the mountaintop. In fact, by that point, most of them will have been so far removed from their roots, they will be out of touch with how to truly benefit their own people, since they will be groomed only to serve our interests. Through our churches, we have another game. You see, it was during the Renaissance that we realized it was the inner genius of ourselves that pushed us through boundaries, not the external genius mentality of the Dark Ages. The former is active, the latter is passive, and it is obviously best that our slaves be passive. Considering that, can you now see the reasoning behind putting faith in Jesus? Putting faith in Jesus. Putting faith in Jesus. This metaphorical messiah complex will keep them in an infantile state of mind, depending on some extraterrestrial entity to reach out and save them from such hell. Even amongst themselves, we can only allow them to temporarily have those messiah-like leaders, because similar with Jesus, they will witness their symbols of hope get crucified and lynched, putting them back to sleep to hibernate until another small glimmer of hope comes back around. They will stay in their place in exchange for something better promised to them in the afterlife, being thankful for just still being alive in such a cold, cruel world, like Hamlet. Speaking of, before I completely transition into option 2, follow me through this segue. Now, in retrospect, it is safe to say that William Shakespeare's canon is held in such high regard because whether it was Macbeth, Othello, or Hamlet, he revealed to us that even the moral fibers of the most esteemed can be altered afraid under the right given circumstances, that creating the harshest circumstances can separate them from their natural state of being, or even bring out the worst in them. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, let us explore option 2 and find out. If we leave them to their own devices, we have yet another revolution here in the Americas, just like Haiti. Remember, anything we do not control can and will be used against us. But a person's tactics heavily depend on the enemy. This is why we must provide that alternative for them in order to shift their focus away from revolution. Now, you may have heard the idea that people are a sum total of their environment and their experiences. So, if we have the power to covertly control their environment and control their experiences, we can much more easily and covertly control the people. And do you remember what I said? This is not just theory anymore. We now have all the resources needed in order to start manifesting this all into a physical, living, breathing reality for them. So allow me to riddle you this. If you place 10 dogs into a pit and starve them for a week, what is likely to happen if you toss just a slither of a pig intestine into the pit? Well, eventually the Negroes will grow to recognize each other as the enemy. And it is at that point that they will become niggers. Because a nigger is just a Negro that takes on the same objective as us, whether consciously or subconsciously. And again, because we now have the resources and the power to turn our ideas into a reality, we can physically manifest a simulation in which the niggers will see each other as the worst, which in turn will make the niggers feel less empathetic towards each other and less inclined to help each other. But they still need to empathize with us in order to take on our agenda. What do I mean by this? Remember, we are basically putting forth an elaborate effort to simulate the worst conditions for them that we had to live through for ages. All we have to do is take a page from history and transplant it here by simulating the same circumstances for them. Under these circumstances, they will empathize with the scarcity. They will empathize with the feeling of enslavement that pregnancy and childbirth begot. They will empathize with wanting to rid themselves of those woes so strongly that they will do all they can to alleviate themselves. Ultimately, they will empathize with our need for chaos in order to thrive. You see, since we are creating them in our own image, and we need chaos in order to thrive, they will in turn adapt into opportunistic savages in order to win in this game they will know as their lives. With all of these gears spinning, revolution will not be a priority, especially when their main focus is just trying to see another day and when their own homes are in chaos. Revolution will seem almost counterproductive and counterintuitive. If they want to live nice and experience that heaven on earth, they will have to do what they have to do, won't they? If you take a closer look at the two options, you will find that there is not much of a difference because they both work in our favor. And so far, we have taken great steps in crafting pristine machinery out of the niggers, progressing in model generation after generation. But this is just the beginning. This piece of machinery that we have created is so ingenious that their future autonomy will come in the form of self-destruction. Anything preventing such needs to be handled as a prominent threat to the preservation and prosperity of our program. Planting seeds. That's what this is all about. This is an investment that will pay off in unprecedented dividends over time, with the undetected indoctrination and infection of their children being a dividend reinvestment program. Believe me when I say the slow way is the fast way. And once they become degenerative enough that they become an instrumental pawn in our game, then they can integrate. But in order to be allowed into our system, they must first prove to not be a threat to the infrastructure. Therefore, in this world, our game, those who submit to the conditioning, whether it be the submissive or the savage, will be the fat rat with the cheese in our project. And that is the quintessence of social engineering. And one of the most ingenious aspects of the game is all of our own white civilians, similar to spoiled children, will become so accustomed to inheriting all of the benefits of this nation that if they want to maintain the status and privileges they have, they will use every little trick in the book to maintain the status quo. Let them be at the forefront, for while the niggers will fight amongst each other, the Negro with more wits about himself will need a red herring. They will attempt to fight against other whites who are perhaps disguised as kings, but in all actuality are pawns, or at most a bishop. And because we have such dividend reinvestment programs that automatically grow our investment portfolio, we will not have to do anything but point a finger to misdirect the blame, like a magician. Now, I believe the most perplexing question is, what will we do with the Negroes once we have our nation completely built off their backs? That is when we make them pay for their own deaths. With this in mind, conversely, we must also cut our way into the business of survival in order for our domination to hold any true weight. I do not want the currencies to be limited to buying only land and natural resources, but the biggest resource of all, their own lives. I see a few of you still wondering how this will all so easily come to be. Well, let us all think from the perspective of a pure capitalist. How can we make them need us? How can we be the solution to a pressing problem? making us the answer to their prayers. What if nature was poisoned so much so they could not see themselves living without us? What if the water was so sullied, so toxic, they depended on us, their God, to bless it, to purify it? And what if the land was so scarce, so unkempt, they depended on us to provide them with food? We must do everything in our power to outsmart and outlaw nature. Since we are the catalyst for their destruction, pain, and suffering, we have the potential to turn their coping mechanisms into a multi-trillion-dollar industry. And again, if we continue to engineer their problems and provide masqueraded solutions, use your imagination. And let us all be very clear on this. Only through their consumerism will it ever be permitted for them to unite. The fox has to sell that fantasy of fraternity, of sitting together at the table of brotherhood. Sell them hope. We will see unprecedented gains in selling hope. And because hope is worthlessly intangible and isn't backed by anything but cheap promises, we have the potential to turn it into an inexhaustible resource, making nearly 100% profit. Hope is merely the bread and butter of the ignorant. And this hope will keep them malnourished, but nonetheless fed for another few hundred years if we play our best hand. We give them hope, and they give us their lives and an empire. So now, in conclusion, I want everyone in attendance, once more, to close their eyes for one final moment. Do you now see the world that is created in our heavenly image? Do you now see the world where we possess more money than there are drops of water in the Atlantic? Do you now see the world where even the biggest sinner in this room can buy his way into heaven on earth? Do you see your name being immortalized in history and engraved into the existence of others in the future? Money, power, respect. Open up your eyes.
Freeze! Freeze, motherfucker! Get your hands on the ground right now! Don't make me shoot you! I repeat, put your hands on the ground right now! Right now! Right now!
many clothes.